What's up, everybody, and welcome to Enjoying the Review. I'm your host, Incomparable Zach Jones, and this is my spoiler-filled review of Joker Folie à Deux. Now, if you would like to watch my non-spoiler review, it is up on the channel right now. Just a little summary of that. My score of the movie was a 5.5 out of 10. I think it was somewhat mediocre, and I don't think the musical aspect of the movie worked. But there are still some craft on display. Good performances by both Joaquin Phoenix. While his singing not great, but his acting wonderful as always. Lady Gaga, great job with singing, and I thought her acting was good as well. But still overall disappointing, but some good elements in it. So now what I'm going to do is go through a plot breakdown of the film. Now, I will say up top, my notes are totally built from memory. So if I miss some scenes, which I'm sure I will, or get some slightly out of order, my apologies. But I think I got a pretty comprehensive list of the breakdown of the film. And so, yeah, without further ado, guys, the spoilers from this point on, and I hope you enjoy. All right, so we open the movie on a Looney Tunes style cartoon with the Joker called Me and My Shadow. So I wasn't expecting this. As someone who likes, old school animation and Looney Tunes, I thought this was an interesting way to start. And basically, the whole message of this cartoon really is that the Joker aspect of Arthur's personality kind of really gets all the adulation, gets to have all this fun. But then, at the end of the cartoon, when the cops come, it's back, Arthur is the one that gets pummeled. So, it's kind of this exploration of, Arthur paying for the crimes of the Joker, which is going to be, explored in the movie. And that's also kind of a big crux to this movie that it leaves you kind of to decide for yourself, is Arthur and the Joker two different entities? Does he have a multiple personality thing going on? Or is it really just Arthur and that's him, and he doesn't necessarily have multiple personality disorders. It's all wrapped into one. So then we transition to Arkham Asylum, where, of course, end of the first movie, that's where Joker ended up. There is a guard played by Brendan Gleeson, and he is whistling when the Saints come marching in. And I don't know, I feel like this movie is layered with symbolism with the music and songs, to where they're supposed to be, very representative of what's happening in the movie at the time. I gotta be honest, I was never enthused or cared enough about them to really dig in and think about all the thematic connections. But this song, The Saints Go Marching In, is played in the prison all the time. He's whistling it here. There's a guy in the prison yard who will play it on the trombone throughout the movie. And also, as an act of rebellion, the inmates start singing it later on. And so I'm not really, I don't know if I necessarily understand the meaning behind it. If anybody in the chat knows the significance there, please jump in. So the inmates line up, and they're basically emptying their chamber pots, which, I don't know, to me, I was trying to, why wouldn't he just have toilets? Is it because, there's a fear that they would drown themselves in the toilets? But then it's if you have inmates carrying like pots full of pee, there's no way that that pee isn't getting on the guards or all. It just seems like a, a bad idea, but maybe that's a thing from some real asylums. I'm not entirely sure. But we get a view of Joaquin Phoenix with his shirt off, and just like in the first movie, he is skeletal skinny, man. So whatever Joaquin had to do to starve himself to get in like shape for these movies, like good on him, because it does not look healthy. Unless, of course, they did it with some sort of tricky CGI, but not that I know of. I think he probably just got really really slimmed down. So during this whole scene, several of the guards ask Arthur to tell them a joke, and that'll be something that's revisited many times. It's like, they even remark like, "Oh, he hasn't told a joke in like several months or whatever," So they shave Arthur to get him ready for a pre-trial interview. He's being interviewed to see whether or not they think he's mentally fit to stand trial. While shaving him, they nick his skin and he kind of licks the blood. So the guards escort him to the meeting, and while on the way, they kind of pass through a different wing of Arkham that I guess is like it has inmates that are less of a security risk. They're not like as dangerous as Arthur and the people he's locked up with. And as he's passing by, Lady Gaga, who of course plays Harley Quinn in this movie, catches his eye as he's walking by. And then when he gets to the end of the hallway, she comes out, gets his attention, and she mimes shooting herself, which kind of brings a smirk to his face. And then the guards pull him away. Oh, and I should have said, like, that room he passed, like, she and the other inmates in that room, they're in this program where they're singing. Like, I think, like, the idea is, like, maybe they'll eventually put on a play or something, So Arthur meets with his lawyer, played by Catherine Keener. A lot of good supporting actors in this movie. Of course, Brendan Gleeson, Catherine Keener. Steve Coogan has a role coming up. And she's basically telling him in the interview he should tell how the Joker is a split personality, and that, like, basically try to convince the person interviewing that he does have multiple personality disorder, and like he didn't feel in control. When the Joker's like, maybe he blacks out. She's telling him maybe he doesn't remember. It's like somebody else is in control. So she's really pushing this multiple personality thing, and you can kind of see like he doesn't really like that idea. Like, maybe he doesn't even really buy into or believe himself that he has a multiple personality disorder. So during the interview, Arthur keeps quiet and doesn't really answer the questions being asked by the interviewer. He just kind of smokes his cigarette. By the way, like, a disgusting amount of cigarette smoking in this movie. He's just like the first movie too. It's like just chain smoking, constantly smoking in these movies. So yeah, he doesn't really, answer the questions. So the next day in the prison yard, Brendan Gleeson tells Arthur that since he's been a good inmate, he got him into the singing program that he saw the day before. And Arthur just kind of doesn't believe it, but he says, no, it's real. And so this makes him happy because he wants to see Harley again. So he's taken by Brendan Gleeson's character to the singing class. And after it's over, he goes up and introduces himself to Harley, who in this movie goes by Lee, which I notice this seems purposeful now, because in the Penguin show now, like Oswald Cobblepot goes by Oz Cobb. And it's not like I have a huge problem with it, but it seems like DC is almost like, in these unconnected like things being like, oh, we're going to have him go by a different name so that it's less of a direct connection, it seems like. I don't know. It seemed unnecessary. And like other people in the movie do still refer to her as Harley, but apparently she goes by Lee. So she tells Arthur that she grew up grew up poor in the same neighborhood he lived in, and that she even went up that long staircase in the first movie when she went to school and things like that. She says she's in the asylum because she lit her parents' apartment on fire. She says her dad was very abusive and that he died in a car accident. On the way back, Arthur... so it seems like him and Brendan Gleeson like are kind of getting along, but he kind of like playfully slaps like pats Brendan Gleeson on the back, and Brendan Gleeson just like forcefully like slaps him in the back of the head. So just kind of reminding him, hey, I'm the guard, you're the inmate, and like, reminding him who's who, basically. So when he gets back, the other inmates are watching news on the TV, and it's announced that Arthur has been deemed mentally fit to stand trial. He's going to have to go to trial. One of the guards tells Arthur that he's going to fry, in the electric chair. And so here we kind of get our first big musical number. Now, I'll be honest, I don't remember all the songs in this movie. And a big thing that, as I mentioned in my non-spoiler review, is it's just they're not very memorable. Like most of them are kind of old standards, and to me, none of them really caught my ear. Like they're ones that I've heard before, but none of the performances here like or anything I'm going to be like, oh, I want to YouTube that song out of this movie or something like that. Just kind of not memorable. But Arthur breaks out in a happy song. Basically, we can tell he's happy that he met Harley. He's kind of feeling like he's in love. But this is obviously a dream sequence that takes place in his head. And sure enough, when the song is over, like it cuts back to, he was just standing watching the TV the whole time. The next day in the singing class, they are watching an old-timey musical, like on a projector. And Harley and him are sitting together. I think she kind of wants to like have him get up from the movie, but he's watching it, and like she almost holds his hand, but she doesn't, that kind of thing. So she goes back in the corner for a smoke break, but she actually ends up like setting a small fire on the piano and goes back and sits down with him. And then, of course, it starts going all up in flames, causes a huge fire. And so everybody's scrambling to get out of there. And Harley grabs his arm and takes him outside. And so she starts breaking into a song here. And like, I kind of thought like maybe because it seemed so odd that like she would do that in this instance. But then like, I believe somebody else refers to her doing that in a later scene. So I think it was legit that she was actually singing here. So they kind of escape, or they run up the like front like fence at Arkham, like they're going to get out, but then the guards pull them back down and get them. For trying to escape, Arthur's thrown into solitary confinement for supposedly 2 weeks, the guard says. While he's in solitary confinement, he has a dream where him and Harley dance and sing on the rooftop. So I would say most of the music spots in the movie are kind of very obvious dreams or imaginings by the Joker like this, like it's, presented in this like dreamlike quality where it's obvious that it's not real. I was thinking though, apparently like the subtitle Folie à Deux basically translates to like shared madness. And if that's the case, I really think they should have gone for making original songs like a traditional musical. Because to me, like in traditional musicals, when somebody just starts singing out of the blue and then the other person just knows the lyrics and like, they have this singing, supposedly off the cuff conversation, that does seem like a shared madness to be able to do that. So I almost would have preferred if they tried to go in a traditional musical route in this movie. I think that could have been kind of cool, and that would actually, that title I think would be more apropos. So when he wakes up, Harley is in solitary with him. She says that she paid off a guard to be there. And he asks if she's really there, which kind of puts in our mind like, oh, is this a figment of his imagination? And I'll be honest, I for sure thought that it was. But then there's far too many callbacks to this scene later on in the movie that makes me think that it can't be made up. And also, I don't think it's a credible theory that Harley is totally like a figment of his imagination either, because she interacts with like too many people in scenes that he's not even in. So I don't know. I guess I just have to assume that this scene really happened, because as we go along and they call back to this, I don't necessarily think it makes sense that this scene didn't happen. But like anybody in the comments, if you have different opinions on it, let me know. So they very briefly have intercourse, and then she tells him that they're letting her out so she'll be able to go to his trial. So Arthur is taken to his lawyer to prepare for a TV interview. She tells him not to smoke because it looks cavalier. Arthur like starts kissing her, which she rejects, which I feel is kind of, there's actually two scenes in this movie where he like kind of forcefully kisses Catherine Keener's character, and they're both kind of odd, and like, I don't know, it's not explained why he does it. Really, I don't know, both kind of odd circumstances. But she rejects that. So he's put up in this interview with this TV guy named Patty something. Anyway, this is Steve Coogan's character. So during the interview, the interviewer tries to get under Arthur's skin, and eventually does. And basically it ends with Arthur yelling at him that, why don't you focus on the fact that I'm not the person I used to be? Like, I've changed. And the interviewer asks how he has changed, and he says he's not alone anymore. And, that was a big thing, at the end of the first Joker movie, when, he kills off De Niro's character, and, his followers, he first discovers that he has these followers, people that actually support him. And, it brings a smile to his face, and it makes him think that he's not as alone in the world as he thinks that he is. And then while he's still on camera, he basically starts singing another song to Harley, kind of a love song. Again, I can't remember in this moment what it was. But Harley sees this performance she's at like a store window that has a bunch of like CTR TV displays. Because this is actually an aspect of the whole Joker thing that I forgot, is like the first movie supposedly takes place in like, I don't know, like late 70s, early 80s. And so you still kind of have an old school aesthetic as far as like technology. So these are like the, square TVs. And like she blatantly like smashes the window and like steals one of the small TVs. And like there's other people there watching and they're just like, I guess we'll let this crazy woman steal a TV. So Arthur goes to court for his trial. As he arrives to the courthouse, there's a huge group of both protesters and Joker supporters, which again brings a smile to his face when he sees his supporters, because again, it's like he's not alone in the world. Like there are people that are on his side. So as everybody gets seated in the courtroom, Arthur stays standing and looks around for Harley, who isn't there at that moment. As they begin to interview the first witness, who is a clinical psychologist who interviewed Arthur, Harley comes into the back of the courtroom, and this makes Arthur happy to see her. He does, however, on his paper, ask his lawyer if Harley can get a seat closer to him next time, a better seat. So this witness they have says that in his personal opinion, Arthur does not have multiple personality disorder. But his lawyer, Catherine Keener, argues and she keeps bringing this up, like you say you were with my client for 2 hours. That's not true. You were actually only with him for 89 minutes. And she keeps kind of harping on that. It wasn't 2 hours. It was 89 minutes. And she asked him, in that time, did you ever ask him about how he was, sent by Child Protective Services back to his abusive mother at the age of 7 and all the abuse he suffered as a child? And he's like, oh, well, no, I didn't ask him about that. And she's like, well, how could you form a valid opinion without even diving, into his backstory and, all the abuse that he suffered at the hands of this governmental system that did not look out for his best interests? So after court, Harley confronts Arthur's lawyer in the hallway, and basically, I forget her exact wording here, but she's upset. She doesn't think she's doing a good job representing Arthur. And she tells the press that she and Arthur are going to make a mountain out of a hill, which I forget to mention is a callback to a bit of dialogue they had when they were in solitary confinement. So, again, credibility to that scene from earlier being real. Because it's, she's referencing it without Arthur even being in that scene. So Arthur's lawyer meets with him and tells him that she does not think it's a good idea for him to be involved with Harley. Arthur tells her that she doesn't get it and that Harley is just like him. Grew up poor in the same neighborhood, abusive father. And she informs Arthur that is a lie, that Harley is actually a rich kid who grew up on the east side or whatever. Her dad's a doctor. She wasn't committed. She actually checked herself into the asylum and checked herself back out voluntarily. And also that she took a psychologist class, or, I don't remember if she has a degree or what. I think probably like a degree in psychology. So we get a scene. I'm not sure exactly if this scene, I might have the timeline of when this scene happened wrong, but there's definitely a scene with Arthur doing his cry laughing, outside in the rain. I don't know if the guards are forcing him to be outside in the rain getting drenched, or if he's just wants to be there. I get the sense that they're probably forcing him to get drenched, and he's taking the abuse basically. So Arthur has a dream where he and Harley host a late night show together, and they come out and they're singing this thing. back and forth, but eventually, like, he stops because, like, you know, she's not even looking at him, and they kind of get in this like argument that ends with her taking out a gun. She's like, let's give the people what they really want. And she takes out a gun and she shoots him in the abdomen. So now we're back, to the real world. Harley meets with Arthur, classic prison scene behind the glass. She tells him that she did lie to him a bit, like people, like couples who meet always do a little bit. But she basically says that she does love him, and also drops a bomb on him that she's pregnant. Which, they never concretely say whether that's true or not. So who knows? It's kind of left up to the audience to decide. She also says, I believe, that either she or maybe her parents were involved, but she bought the apartment that he used to live in. You do kind of get the sense that she's, kind of a fangirl of him, She then sings the, why do birds suddenly appear every time you're near? And we get the scene from the trailer where she puts the lipstick on the glass and then he lines it up with his face so it looks like he's smiling. And so we get the sense that, he's kind of happy again with their relationship. The next day at the trial, they interview Sophie from the first movie. So this is Zazie Beetz' character. So this I briefly kind of referenced in my non-spoiler review, is a character I wish they didn't bring back. Because in the first movie, they kind of leave it ambiguous as to whether he killed her or not. Now, in my headcanon, I never believed that he killed her, but it's something I think they should have left a mystery. So I don't like her being here because I think it kind of lessens the impact of that scene from the first movie. Because now we know, without a shadow of a doubt, that she did live. And I, even though I thought she did, I liked the ambiguity being there. She tells how Arthur's mother was nice to her and her daughter, but told her that basically Arthur was weird. She also tells about how Arthur broke into her apartment, but he did not hurt either her or her daughter. But she also says she had to move out of town, basically, for fear of what, his followers might do to her because she was a witness. I'm sure that kind of is meant to be a parallel to certain news stories in the real world. It kind of makes you think of the whole Alex Jones's followers harassing like the Sandy Hook parents and things like that. So maybe that is meant to be somewhat of a parallel to things that have happened in our real world. So Arthur has another dream sequence where he sings a song. I'll be honest, I don't think I even recognized what this song was. But in it, I should mention, like, the lead prosecuting lawyer is Harvey Dent. In this sequence, while he's singing, he kills Harvey, like beats him with a stool. He also takes a gavel and kills the judge. At the same time, Harley takes like Harvey Dent's blood and makes a blood smile in her face, and it's this whole dream sequence. But when Arthur comes out of the dream, he once again kisses Catherine Keener, his lawyer, and fires her, saying that he will instead represent himself for the rest of the trial. This causes a big uproar with the judge and the audience, but both Harley and the other inmates at the asylum are like cheering, like they're very happy. So Harley meets with Arthur outside of his jail cell. They kiss several times, even though the guard's telling them not to touch. And I forget the exact conversation, but basically she tells him that he did the right thing, representing himself. She might even reference the whole making mountains out of hills thing again here. I can't quite remember. Also, I thought this was disgusting. He takes a drag of a cigarette, and like she like sucks the cigarette smoke like out of his mouth, which is just disgusting. So back at the asylum, the inmates break into song, singing "When the Saints Go Marching In." Again, I referenced this earlier. This causes a big fight between the guards and the inmates, and Arthur just kind of stands on top of like the lunch table and laughs. Again, I don't know what the Saints Go Marching In. To be fair, I'm not sure I know what that song's about to begin with exactly, but why it's always played in the prison, I don't know what the significance is. The next day at the trial, Arthur represents himself, and I find this to be kind of a stretch that he would allow this, but the judge is like, since you're representing yourself, I'm going to let you dress how you like. So he actually lets him dress in full Joker regalia with the Joker face paint. So the final witness is the little person from the first movie whose last name is Puddles. I think his name is like Greg Puddles or something like that. So this scene was somewhat entertaining. Arthur kind of puts on like a southern lawyer voice, I'm just a small town bird lawyer, that kind of thing. And he makes fun of his name being Puddles and stuff like that. But eventually, and I don't have this actor's name written down, the little person, but he actually does a very good job here. And he says that Arthur made him feel scared, like he's been scared ever since, witnessing Arthur kill the other guy in his apartment. And he's felt little and helpless ever since. And he also mentions that, it was a shame because Arthur was the only one who was nice to him, at their old job. Everyone else was mean to him, made fun of him, but Arthur never did. So Harvey Dent says the prosecution rests their case. And much to the surprise of the judge, Arthur says the defense also rests. That's the. Although I don't know how I feel about that. I think it might have been more entertaining to actually see Arthur with a few more witnesses, and try his hand at defending himself. I think I would have liked them to do that a little bit more. So there's another dream sequence where Harley sings a gospel song about making mountains out of, and so, my guess is that still isn't an original song. They probably decided to use that song and then kind of work backwards to have that line of dialogue before, I would imagine. But in this sequence, she gets married to Arthur, and Puddles is like the best man. Or maybe he's the ring boy, I don't know. And then they transition to the scene where like she sings and plays on a piano while Arthur tap dances. It's a whole to-do. So back at the asylum, the guards just beat the hell out of Arthur, take him to the bathroom, and just beat the hell out of him. They then throw him in a cell, and then Arthur has to listen while they beat up a friend of his, who I didn't mention. There's this other, kind of slow guy that kind of, he doesn't play a huge role in the movie, but he kind of befriended Arthur and hung out with him in earlier scenes. So Harley gets ready for the last day of the trial. She sings a song. Again, I don't remember what song, while putting on, heavy eye makeup. And then she kind of dresses in a flamboyant, red outfit. So, this is really the most Harley Quinn, you get out of her in this movie, appearance wise. She's kind of got the, whitish makeup with the black eyeliner, and then almost like a Red Queen from Alice in Wonderland type of outfit. It's kind of the closest we get to Harley Quinn in this movie. So during Arthur's closing comments in the trial, he says that there is no Joker. And this angers Harley, and she storms out of the courtroom. While waiting for the verdict to come in, Arthur calls Harley and leaves a long, long message on her machine where he sings a song. And again, this displays that, Joaquin Phoenix, as talented as he is, singing isn't necessarily his top skill. So this is like a very kind of, whisper singing song. I can't tell you what it was. It wasn't, anything special to listen to. And we do get a scene a little further down where she does indeed hear this message on her answering machine. So Arthur returns to court, and the jury starts reading the verdict. And basically, they're finding him guilty of every count. But all of a sudden, and I got to say, I think, they might have showed this in a trailer. I'm thinking they might have, but I had kind of forgotten anything I saw in the trailer. And so all of a sudden, there's this huge explosion. The wall blows out behind him. And it actually did catch me kind of by surprise, because I kind of forgot, like I said, I want to say it was briefly in one of the trailers, but I forgot. But so this huge explosion happens. Arthur's thrown across the room. When he wakes up, the place is a mess. It looks like there's probably several people who died in the explosion. And also, I was wondering if they would do it. We kind of see that, yes, one half of Harvey Dent's face, does look scarred up from the explosion. So a little two-faced Easter egg there for you. So Arthur climbs down the rubble of the building and is spotted by one of the Joker supporters, who grabs him and brings him to their car. And there's another Joker, dressed guy driving the car. And so they have him, put his head down so the police don't see him. But eventually they're stopped at a stoplight, and Arthur decides to get out of the car and run for it, which is a bad idea, but he really wants to see Harley. That's the only thing on his mind. What his supporters kind of run after him, but the cops show up then, and one of them straight up gets hit by a cop car, and they're caught, but Arthur himself is able to get away. So he runs to, of course, the famous long staircase from the first movie. And he notices that towards the top of the stairs, Harley is sitting there. So he runs up to her. He tells her that he is free and they can run away together. But she says they were never going to run away together. And she doesn't want to be with him anymore because he said the Joker doesn't exist. And so basically it appears, that really she was in love. She was fascinated with the Joker. She doesn't really care about Arthur, the Arthur side of the personality. So I guess this is, thematically kind of goes back to the whole Me and My Shadow cartoon from the beginning of the movie. It's the Joker, he gets, the fame, the adulation, he even gets the woman, but Arthur does not. Um, and so it kind of makes, you know, Harley, this version of Harley, kind of much more devious in a way than Harley has traditionally been portrayed in, comics and uh, animated form and the movies. So I guess it's cool that they did something different with her. Um, she does seem very different from the Harley we're used to. So Arthur is arrested again and is watching TV with his fellow inmates when the guard tells him that he has a visitor. So he goes to meet with the visitor, and a fellow inmate stops him, to tell him a joke. Now, this inmate, he was showed earlier on in the movie, but they didn't really put a huge spotlight on him or make him stand out in any way, really. And I don't remember exactly the joke told. It was like, what happens, like a psychopath, goes up to a clown who's drinking alone at a bar, and he says, "I'll buy you anything you want," and he's, God, how does it? It's something where like, what do you get? Or God, the clown asks like, "What can I get you?" And he says like, "Exactly what you deserve," or something. I don't remember. It was a callback to his line with De Niro's character from the first movie. But basically, this guy pulls out a shiv and just starts stabbing him repeatedly in the abdomen. As Arthur is bleeding out, he has a flashback to his vision of Harley earlier on in the movie, turning on him and shooting him in the abdomen. So you kind of get that callback thematically. So Arthur lies down, bleeds to death, and dies with a slight smile on his face. While in the background, the other inmate slices. You can kind of see he gives himself the Heath Ledger Joker treatment, where he, slices his mouth on both sides, slices a smile into his face. And, presumably becomes a new Joker, which I don't really care about. And I don't know if it was necessarily, but I remember, when the first movie was happening, I was like, and there's even a scene in the first movie where Joaquin meets like young Bruce Wayne. And it's like, well, if we're to believe that in this universe, Batman does eventually exist, like, does it make sense for Joaquin to be his Joker when he would be so much older? Well, I guess now in this universe, there technically is a younger Joker who would still be older, than Bruce, but maybe like would make more sense to be a Joker that feuds with Batman. One thing I noted is, we never find out who Joker's visitor was, or did he really have a visitor, or was this a ploy by the guard to get him separated so that he could be killed by the other inmate? That's it. Could be too, but could it possibly be that Harley or somebody else was actually there to visit him? I guess we're left to wonder that. So yeah, that's everything I could kind of remember. So again, I guess my final thoughts on the movie are, if you liked the first Joker movie like I did, I do think this is at least worth a watch. I would not pay to go see it in a theater. I would wait for streaming. If you did not like the first movie, you're not going to like this one. And if you did not watch the first movie for some reason, do not jump in on this one because it so heavily references the first movie. You would be kind of lost. And also, the first movie's better, so why wouldn't you watch the first movie first? You know what I mean? But yeah, again, I think if I take anything away from going through my notes here is like anytime a musical number came up, I was just like, I don't really remember what the song was. It didn't leave an impression on me, and so I think that's the biggest thing. I guess kudos for the swing of trying to make this thing a musical. It was kind of a out of left field, kind of like out of the box way of thinking. But ultimately, I don't think it worked very well. But still, some good performances. And I'll say even I think so, some good direction by Todd Phillips. I think just overall the story was not strong enough, and the music detracted rather than making the film better. So yeah, my final score, 5.5 out of 10. Let me know, guys. Did you see the movie? I mean, if you listen to this spoiler review, I would hope you saw the movie, but tell me in the comments below what you thought. And as always, if you will, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can also subscribe in audio form on your podcast catcher of choice. Thumbs up, positive reviews, all that stuff. I appreciate it very much. If you would like, you can follow me over on Twitter/X at Zach Jones Live. That's ZachJonesLive. But until next time, guys, I hope you are enjoying the review. Bye, guys.